Hello and welcome to this training video about internal auditing under the Livestock Global Assurance Program, or LGAP. This training video will answer 5 basic questions about internal audits, namely who, what, when, where and why. Firstly, we'll talk about why internal audits are required, who can conduct them, what an internal audit actually is, and where they get recorded. Lastly, we'll talk about when they need to be completed. To get started, let's look at why internal audits are required under LGAP. Internal audits form part of an LGAP management system and are detailed in the standard LGAP 1002 Requirements for Management Systems. Specifically, clauses 4.2 and 10.1 detail that internal audit processes, so how you do internal audits, be documented and that they be undertaken. These two clauses are the basis of why internal audits are required. Internal audits are a very useful tool. They're a way to check on your operations and make improvements to the way you do things, or identify issues before they become bigger problems. Internal audits form part of a process called continual improvement, which is all about checking to make sure you have met all of your obligations and maybe find a better way of doing things. For example, you could find a more cost-efficient or cost-effective way of performing a task you do every day through internal audits. They're also a great tool to identify and fix non-conformities before an external auditor arrives to complete an external audit. Next, let's look at the requirements around internal auditors and who can be an internal auditor under LGAP. Internal auditors are the people or persons who undertake internal audits. They are appointed by LGAP operators or facilities and can be either a member of staff or an external party. For example, an internal auditor for a feedlot could be an exporter or an importer representative. Alternatively, an internal auditor may be an independent company contracted to undertake internal audits. When applying for LGAP certification, an internal auditor needs to be nominated and their contact details provided. The internal auditor can also always be changed, but someone needs to be nominated at the time of applying. Internal auditors must be competent. Competency relates to skills and knowledge, and the exact requirements are detailed in Annex A of LGAP 1002. Specifically, internal auditors must have relevant knowledge and skills in relation to conducting internal audits, the operations at the site they're auditing, and an understanding of the LGAP certification requirements so they can accurately assess conformity. They also need to have attended LGAP training before they conduct their first internal audit. Internal auditors cannot audit their own area of responsibility or work. This is to ensure impartiality and provide an objective assessment. If an internal auditor audited their own work, they're less likely to pick up issues with it. They also can't be associated in any way with the allocated approved certification body or approved auditor, as that is seen as a conflict of interest. Internal auditors will need access to the ANIMARC conformance system to complete internal audits, so user access needs to be provided to them. Now we're going to look at what the internal audit actually involves. Internal audits assess how effectively your organization's management system and overall performance is going. Internal audits should verify monitoring data and check to see if procedures have been followed. The internal auditor needs to read and understand the processes and procedures on site, assess if they meet the LGAP requirements, and then check if the procedures are being followed or not. Generally, internal audits use a checklist which contains a series of questions relating to the business. During internal audits, the internal auditors need to look at paperwork such as procedures, monitoring records, incoming and outgoing livestock records, training records for personnel, or any other paperwork that's relevant. They also need to interview people on site to confirm their knowledge of the procedures and record-keeping requirements. This is also to confirm their competency. Internal auditors can also review previous internal audit outcomes and check to confirm that previous non-conformities haven't occurred again. Internal auditors should also walk through the site, conduct monitoring of animal handling activities, inspect animals, look at infrastructure, equipment, and also observe personnel handling animals. For example, an internal auditor could read the animal handling procedure, watch that animals being handled, interview the personnel performing that task, and then check to make sure that records are made in relation to the activity. The internal auditor can then assess what they've just collected as evidence and determine whether or not the procedure was followed or not. If the procedure hasn't been followed or it doesn't meet the LGAP certification requirements, the internal auditor can raise a non-conformity. Identifying non-conformities during an internal audit can be very useful. They allow you an opportunity to fix an issue before it becomes a bigger problem or is found during an external audit. There is a key difference with non-conformities and corrective actions from internal audits to those from external audits, namely that internal non-conformities do not need to be closed by approved auditors because they're internal to the business. Taking action to rectify non-conformity involves a number of steps, but it allows you a chance to fix the issue and stop it happening again. An internal auditor can raise a non-conformity, report it to management, and ensure it's closed. The process of managing non-conformities includes a number of steps. In many cases, you'll need to react to the non-conformity immediately. This is called making an immediate correction. For example, if someone was hitting an animal, you would need to stop that person from hitting the animal. You would then need to look at the underlying cause of the non-conformity. So why did it happen? For example, did the person hitting the animal receive a training appropriate to handling methods? So once you've identified the cause of the non-conformity, you need to take corrective action to eliminate it. This could be providing training to the animal handler. You'll then need to continue to monitor and review the effectiveness of the corrective action. For example, does the animal handler use appropriate handling techniques after they've received the training? You will then need to ensure the processes, procedures, and practices are updated within your business. For example, you may need to revise your training procedures to ensure that all new staff receive training in animal handling before they work with livestock. This makes sure that it doesn't happen again. You'll also need to retain appropriate records to demonstrate that the corrective action, i.e. training, has been taken and is effective. The corrective action needs to be recorded in the ANIMARC conformance system against the non-conformity. The next topic is a very important one, and that is where and how does an internal auditor complete the internal audit? Internal audits are completed and recorded in the ANIMARC conformance system. Each internal audit has a checklist which needs to be completed by the set due date. Internal audits can be started and saved, and you can come back to finish it off later. Alternatively, if you have internet connection, you can use a tablet or mobile device to complete the checklist while on the go. The internal audit checklist is specific to your scope of certification. That is, you'll only get questions that are relevant to your business. You can upload evidence for each question directly into the system, and the checklist will create non-conformities from the checklist to make it easier to track and close them. Corrective actions taken can be entered into the checklist at the same time or added in later. Internal audit results should be entered in English into the ANIMARC conformance system. However, there are translated versions of the internal audit checklist available for use on site. The internal audit checklist and questions the internal auditor needs to answer are provided by the ANIMARC conformance system. The questions have either yes or no responses. Yes means an operator or facility is conforming, and no means they are not conforming. The internal auditor can add comments to each question and record their observations. They can also upload evidence such as photos, videos, or documents to support their findings. If the internal auditor answers no to a question to indicate there is a nonconformity, the LGAP certification requirements, or their own procedures, the system will automatically create a nonconformity entry. This can then be corrected and closed in the system. Guidance is also available in the checklist to assist internal auditors in answering each question. Our last topic in our video is when internal audits are required to be completed. To become certified under LGAP, the first internal audit must occur before the first external audit can be conducted by an approved auditor. After this, the frequency of internal auditing is based on the risk rating allocated to the operator or facility as part of the certification decision. If an operator or facility has a low risk rating, the internal audits must occur every 4 months. A medium risk rating requires internal audits to occur every 3 months, and a high risk rating requires internal audits to be conducted every month. Internal audits will be available in the ANIMARC conformance system and will have a due date applied so you can keep track of what is due and when. It's important to remember that the risk rating can change after each external audit, and the system will create the correct number of internal audits based on the risk rating assigned after each external audit. That brings us to an end of the session on LGAP internal audits. The key things to remember about internal audits are that they are completed by competent internal auditors and help ensure management system procedures are being followed. Internal audits help identify and correct issues before they become bigger problems and play a role in continual improvement. They're completed using an internal audit checklist via the ANIMARC conformance system, and they need to be completed at the frequency set by your risk rating. There are also additional resources about internal audits available on the ANIMARC website, including translated versions of the checklists. Thank you for watching today's session. If you have any questions or would like further information about the Livestock Global Assurance Program, internal auditing, or anything generally, please get in touch with the team at ANIMARC or visit our website at www.animarc.com.au.